Good afternoon, world. It is moments past noon in Waxahachie, Texas, deep in the heart of the Lone Star State. Today is July 10th. This is episode number 75. Number 75, 3/4 of a century of grit and good news. And as always, we're broadcasting live from our palatial studio here in downtown Waxahachie in the shadows of the Ellis County Courthouse. And I'm your co-host, Jeffrey Michael Lynch. We got our man Scott Brooks,
Sammy Brooks.
Sammy Brooks, ably working the board with his patented peace finger sign. And my friend and yours, it gives me great pride to introduce my co-host,
Thank you, bud.
Scott Brooks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this warm day outside. I believe it's probably going to hit in the field. It feels like temperature, which is all that matters to me. I don't care. It's what it feels like I'm concerned about.
It's just like in the wind cold, wind
Yeah,
chill,
yeah.
same deal.
It's 100. It's going to be 100 out there today, and but it's beautiful and the wind's blowing. So I'm not going to complain. I've decided this is the year. I'm not going to complain about the heat.
We just
Now,
keep getting enough of the
yeah,
big storms. When you
yeah.
get the big storms and a lot of water in the ground, and then you get the heat, you're going to get the humidity.
Yeah, I just in about a month when we're doing our 80th show and our 85th show in late August, that's when I'll really have to practice not complaining. But I don't want to complain. This past winter was just too cold for me. I know you've been in the cold, but
No, no,
I
it hurt
just
my knees.
I want to take the heat and live with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for being here. We do this show every Tuesday, Thursday. Any celebrations for 100 episodes? Oh, we need to think about that. What Chuck just said. 100 celebration episode. We might, Chuck. Good idea.
We had a cake at 50, didn't we?
Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah,
we
we did.
did. So we'll have something. Uh, so thank you for being here. Great good news. You can watch and listen and talk and share and opine every Tuesday and Thursday from noon to 1 at Texas time, which is Central Standard Time for those of you that may not know that. We are proud Texans and happy to be here. Although I'm the only one in the room born in Texas.
Why do you keep saying that? You got
Because I
such a
like it.
short memory.
No, why do I know I don't think you were born in Minnesota, but I thought you were born. No, you were
Corpus
born Corpus
Christi,
Christi.
the sparkling city
Yes,
by
my
the
bad.
sea.
Yes, my bad. Sammy is a Texan because he's lived here 20 years out of his 21 years, but he was born in Cleveland. And so he'll always at some point maybe you'll develop, I don't know if you're proud to say that now or just because it's interesting. It's a icebreaker, people say, "Where are you born?" Well,
I think I need to go to Cleveland to be
The
proud of it because I
mistake
don't
yeah,
know
on
you
the
and
anything.
lake.
Kennedy you ought to take a rent a car and
Yeah,
take a day trip. You can go to Cleveland Browns right across the river is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is really cool.
yeah. Oh,
And it,
and I can go in the NFL Hall of Fame in
yeah,
Ohio.
Canton. It's
Canton.
just about an hour south of Cleveland, if that.
Yeah, I
I
need to
was
go
at the
visit.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2011 for a sales meeting,
Hmm.
and the top management people that I went to with it let me go the next morning to a meeting at 9:30.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that
Did you
was
like it? The Hall of Fame?
yeah,
It was
but
cool, huh?
it's tainted by that memory.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's a cool place. I mean,
Yeah,
that Hall of Fame, football Hall of Fame, baseball Hall of Fame, I've been to. I haven't been to the Hockey Hall of Fame, which I believe is in Toronto. And
and the
then,
U.S. one is in Ely, Minnesota.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, which one am I missing? Basketball Hall of Fame is in.
Did you get Cooperstown for baseball?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Maury and I went there. It was really cool. And out back behind there, the Hall of Fame at like kind of like at
Mm.
Canton, although it's just not out back. But you open the back door at the Baseball Hall of Fame, and there sits Doubleday Field, little baseball field where they have a Hall of Fame game every year. So anyway, I digress. We got a lot to talk about, and let us start with some updates. We're number
And,
75.
and speaking of Hall of Fames,
Yes.
I'm giving you 4 in a row
All right.
that are
I can name one.
all in Canton. Okay, who you got?
How long?
Howie Long.
Yep.
One of the greatest haircuts of all times, and he's never changed it. And
He hasn't. Crew cut.
now he's got the second son playing, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another some Mean Joe Green.
Mean Joe
Right up
Green,
the
yeah.
Reed Road.
Pittsburgh Hall of
Yep.
Fame.
Yep.
And we got Deacon Jones with the Rams. These
Yeah.
guys all were on the defensive line, except the next one I'm going to give you. And I got a little stat on Deacon was He was the one that they started keeping the stat on sacks
Yeah,
because of Deacon.
yeah, I
Okay,
remember.
and then we got Forrest Gregg on the O line for the
Well,
Packers.
the Green Bay Packers later became their coach.
Later became the coach,
Yeah,
and in one he was in the Ice Bowl.
yeah. That's
And
a great group of.
that's a nice group.
I was thinking 75 on the Cowboys.
Oh, and yeah, we got Jethro Pugh with the
Yeah,
Cowboys.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's
I
not.
think
He's
you know who else was on the Cowboys
but
at
he's
number
got 2
75?
rings, but he's not in the Hall. Who else?
Tony was a defensive lineman. He was in the
Tony Cast- Casi-
yeah,
Cas-
that's him.
Cas- Castillo. Castillo.
Castillo? Yeah, he was in the Super Bowl days in the 90s.
He used to have season tickets at the old Reunion Arena
Oh yeah.
with Daryl Moose Johnson
Yeah.
behind the goal. And when I was goal judging, and he'd be back about 4 rows and off to my left.
That's funny. I just saw the back of your hair. Let everybody see. Turn on. You got to turn all the way around now. You can't be doing
I'm a little.
70. He's 70. Well, you will be Saturday.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Has it been there this whole time and I not noticed?
Well, you hadn't seen me from the back today. No,
Well,
I just got it this morning at
oh,
my barber.
that's too
I was
funny.
a little disappointed. I didn't think it showed up enough.
No, it does.
It does.
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
just right.
All right,
All
good.
right, let's talk about. Are you done with the numbers?
Very little in the NHL
Yeah,
or in the association, as the NBA likes to call it, or
yeah.
MLB.
I can't imagine 75 in the NBA. That's weird.
Yeah.
All right. So this week, as it pertains to specifically Waxahachie, and for those of you that don't live here, indulge us for just a minute. Our longtime city manager, Michael Scott, and when I say longtime city manager, it's pushing 8 or 9 years that Michael has been the city manager of Waxahachie. Prior to that, he was the assistant city manager for a number of years. Over the years, I've had the good fortune of becoming friends with Michael and know him on, not a peripheral level or shallow level. We've had many a talk. Sometimes he's called me up and said, let's go to a park and name the park, and I'll be there and we'll just talk really on a deep level. And I've done the same with him. I trust him and like him and appreciate him for all that he is. Um, and from my vantage point, he's run the city well, but I don't sit on city council. And for those of you, this really would be applied to anybody watching, but there are cities, Jeff and I have talked about it. There are cities, and we may have talked about this the other day,
Yeah, we did.
but there are cities that are heavy on the city manager side and staff side, and that's who runs the city. Then you have cities that are heavy on the mayor side, and to a lesser degree, but more so than what we have had here in the past, uh, weaker influence and impact by council.
Right. And on the city manager side, council is very strong.
Yeah. So yeah, you have to. Somebody's got to rein in the city manager.
Yeah, I
The
mean, they report to him,
yeah.
and
No, he reports to them. In our case, that therein lies one of the challenges is that because our city council, they're voted in,
Mhm,
but the mayor isn't voted in other than by the 5 city council people.
right.
But the city manager who hires, all the department
Hmm.
heads and police
Hmm.
chief, fire chief, and all, is reports to. It's not an elected position. It's a professional position, but it reports to council.
Right.
So council has all the power with respect to the relationship between council and the city manager. So in our case, and like any city's case, but where we change, we have city council elections every year, and they're 2-year terms. So two of them, like this coming spring, next spring, 2 of them will be up for reelection.
Right.
Oh, wait a minute. No, 3 of them will be up for reelection and 2 of them won't. So every year, the potential for council to change in terms of personalities and direction and mindsets, it would be like you and I working for somebody
Right.
for a year, knowing that at the year mark, that person could be different. That's the way the city manager looks at city council and says, okay, it's going great right now, but if we get some bozo in at city council who I've had a past run-in with, what happens?
Yeah, and Scott, people always talk about their vote doesn't count, and how low the poll numbers are at all levels,
Yeah,
even national elections.
yeah,
But at the city council level, we have terrible
we do.
turnout, and this is your chance to let your vote really count.
Yeah, so we live in what is now a city of population of about 50,000. we will have in any given election for city council. I'll be uh, kind and say that there are going to be 1,500 1,500 will get somebody voted in. It could be less. It could be a little more, but by and large, it's 1,500 people that are going to decide a
Right.
city council that has control over the city manager. Both both the city manager and council, impact our daily lives.
And in our case, um, Trey Atkins of Atkins Seafood
Yeah,
fame, first time he'd run, and he ousts David Hill, who was not only the councilman, he was our mayor. I mean,
right.
you think that local politics aren't run by grassroots efforts? He got out the vote
Yeah, he
for
did. He
his
worked hard.
people.
He worked hard. And so we have. I've often said that school boards and city councils are not to the exclusion of voting for other nationally and state, but those two entities are critical. They
Yeah.
they can they can change our lives in a heartbeat by what they do. Really, if we're parents, specifically on the school board, but uh, it, so Michael, I don't know how many different sets of counsel
Mhm.
uh, he's had in his time here in Waxahachie, but I know it's many, and yeah, it may slow down because not many people are running for city council. But last 2 years ago, the council we have now, say 4 years ago, the council we have now didn't exist, and I believe all of them are different now.
So, are you going to give us the Reader's Digest
Yeah.
redacted version?
Yeah, so I've spoken to a number of folks about this, not the least of which is Michael himself.
Right.
And again, Michael is a Christian man. He understands that how things work in city government and that this can happen. And so he sounded upbeat. He sounded confident. He should be confident. He's 54 years old. If he wants to stay in the business, he'll be able to, go wherever he wants to go.
Yeah.
I'd line up to and be the first to say I think he's done an absolutely wonderful job in the city of Waxahachie. Does the city manager do what every city council person wants the way they want it done? Absolutely not. But I think if there's any scuttlebutt here, it's that there are a couple of folks, although with a 5-0 vote,
Right.
to discontinue the relationship. And Michael recognized it as well. Why would anyone want to work in that environment? I mean, money can only cover so much, right?
Right.
So I think it was a situation both agreed with. Hey, Terry, thanks for being here, bud. So, but I do think I know there are some folks who ran. Trace is one of them. He might deny it, but I would challenge him about that he had prior issues with Michael,
Mm.
and despite telling me and our audience when we interviewed him when he was running that won't play a part. The real world says that it does play a part.
Memories can be long.
Yeah, I think Travis Smith, Billy Wallace, those were the ones who uh, had the biggest issues with Michael. Patrick Suter and Chris Wright were more pro Michael. I know a lot of in my circle of friends, which is changing a little bit, I will tell you, uh, thinks highly of Michael and believes has done a good job. Now the challenge is, you know, we've had we had a city manager who left and who was canned in 2016, I believe it was. And based on everything I knew then, which has only become more true over the years, is that it was warranted. And so, but he was loved here. I mean, loved. And so now we have 8 or 9 years later, we have another change. And, this is an important time for the city.
And I would say I admire a council where if it looks that it's going three, your two don't count for anything, and instead of um, putting in your vote just to not out of spite, but just
Yeah.
out of principle and to take a stand on something that they go for the unity of the council.
Yeah.
That's kind of admirable in a way.
That's an interesting point. A number of people have asked me in the three days, 'cause this happened Monday night, so 2 days, have asked me about that 5-0 vote because it was not a secret that Patrick and Chris Wright, were pro Michael. Uh, why would it be a 5-0 vote in that case? And I think the admirable answer is that they want to be unified. They
Yeah,
don't.
yeah,
However, and this is why I'm not in politics, one of the reasons. But however, if I would have been pro Michael, and I
yeah.
would have been, you could have had 90 million voting make the change, and I would have been. There's no way I'm voting for that. I don't. If it looks admirable for me to go along, so we look united, cool. I get that, but I'm not doing it.
Right.
It's the same thing with being on a jury.
Yeah.
If I come out of a jury and out of a case and get the case in the jury room, and I believe the person's innocent or guilty, and I'm certain in my mind that they're I'm not changing my mind. As simple as that. Now, if I'm kind of not quite sure, then somebody could change my mind. But we've both been
Yeah.
in cases where are examples in life where I've said to people, pick a different battle to fight because you're not going to win
Mm-hmm.
this one,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm not changing my mind. Period. So I think Michael, it was a good run. He's overseen a lot of important changes in Waxahachie. I think some of this was brought on by the announcement of Sam's Warehouse looking at it hasn't gone before P&Z yet, but it got out, and some council members didn't know about it, and so I think there was some butt up on the dashboard feelings about, well, hey, why didn't we know about this? That at face value, you say, well, yeah, why wouldn't they know? Well, there are certain things that a city manager may know that if he signs an NDA, he can't
Right.
tell anybody.
Well, weren't we supposed to get that other number three behind Costco and Sam's that they approved?
BJ, yeah,
Yeah.
it's going up. It's in our
And so
neighborhood,
Sam's is,
right
boy.
next to it. I mean, when I say right next to it, within
Yee.
300, 400, 500 yards,
Wow.
right there on 77 across from Capizano's in that area. That's leading into my subdivision and BJ. So I see BJ's going up quick. Um, Chuck says politics is ugly business, no doubt. You know that firsthand, brother. I know you do.
Thank you, Chuck, on the birthday.
Yes. So we will have a change at the city management level. I don't know who that will be. There is a meeting coming up, a open to the public, although they will go into executive session on in part of it. But they will be naming an interim city manager soon. There is a deputy city manager, Albert. Um, I like and think the world of. I don't know if he will be the guy. I simply don't know. But we will be reporting more about it, and I think I'm going to have a column about it.
Okay,
I
cool.
do. Okay. So, how about going to the airport now? Don't have to take off your shoes. That is a pain.
No doubt.
But well, I don't know about those, but you wear your, what do you call those shoes you wear? What are those Sammy
I,
shoes?
I, I
Hey
usually
dudes.
what my hey dudes
Yeah.
usually.
So
Yeah.
those are pretty
I don't
simple.
know why I'm not wearing my hey dudes
Yeah.
lately.
Well, anyway, so if you haven't heard, no more taking your shoes off at the airport. That was brought on by some idiot Muslim, uh, Middle Eastern guy, I should say, not Muslim, but Middle Eastern back in 2001 when he put a bomb in his heel of his shoe. He was going to blow himself to pieces, but it didn't. I can't remember the details, but they caught him before he did it. And so we've ever since then, for 24 years, we've had to take our shoes off when we go to the airport. Not anymore. So that's good news for those of you who fly a lot. I try to avoid flying. All right, I wanted to mention too. This is not on our list, so it may surprise you. But Brian Koberger, the Idaho murderers,
Yeah.
has pled guilty,
Right.
and I can't fathom. I can't. When I saw him plead guilty, I mean, the judge asked him on do you plead guilty in killing so and so four
Hmm.
times,
Right.
and because he got a fifth uh, guilty for burglary, and he just sat there and said yes, and I'm thinking, how in the world? How in the world? I mean,
How in the world do you do it? Well, you
how I
take the
know how he
cases
did it,
against you.
but I'm just thinking about the how void of a soul or a heart or how distant. You must. And this guy didn't know him. He didn't know him. He didn't. They didn't do anything to him.
Right.
He just killed him. And so I don't. I mean, he knew who they were, and he followed them a little bit. I mean, three of them were women, girls, and so I just. But I'm looking at a human being who's so void of life that that he just is now admitting what he was going to go to court and try to convince the jury he didn't do.
But you know what? He avoided the death penalty in Idaho, and you know how they do it in Idaho?
They shoot you.
Firing squad.
So let me ask you this:
One of 6 states,
if
five
you're
or
the
6 states.
dad of one of those kids, and they're when they're Sammy's age, would and you were told that he made a plea deal to avoid the death
Oh, they're
penalty,
incensed.
yeah, would
Yeah.
you be?
Yeah, especially because you want the guy to have to really come clean and explain what happened and
Yeah,
bare his soul and so they feel empty. Yeah, no doubt.
yeah. So when then I agree with that. But the I think it's a theory fair enough for most of us to maybe pass through our minds, but he's got to go back into the prison system. He's admitted to killing four young
Right,
people,
right.
and I'm sure they're going to be co-prisoners in there with him who have children that age, and who he's known now that it's like killing Jeffrey Dahmer, or anybody else that's been murdered, high profile,
Yeah,
Whitey
yeah.
Bulger,
I
others.
think the death sentence might have firing squad might have been an easier way to go,
Yeah, it would
frankly.
have
So,
protected him. I mean, I don't know in Idaho if they speed it up quicker than the 20 years. Other states here, we don't go that long.
right.
But, most states you sit on death row for 20 years, all these appeals.
Yeah.
And this guy, he's in his 30s, so, or maybe even younger than that. But um, it would have definitely been an easier route for him. I think he's now going to have to live in a system where every minute could be his last.
I think he had an empty life. I was listening to something and they were talking about the sequence of events
Hmm.
and they got through to the fact that okay, so he went back to his apartment afterwards and then they went and they looked in his apartment and they said it was Spartan. Can you imagine living in a Spartan apartment by yourself? Just
Yeah,
like
it's a bizarre. It's just awful. But anyway, that's some latest news. And then one last thing, another judge in New Hampshire just this morning, a federal judge has now banned the birthright citizenship, ceasing that, which is what Trump wants to do. And I'm with him. But this judge has said for infants only, he's banning, or she, I don't know if it's a he or she judge, but is banning Trump from ceasing that part of it. So if the judge is allowing the parents to not be included in birthright citizenship, only infants that are born here. So now what's going to happen, I think, is that the Supreme Court's going to look at that and do what the Supreme Court's going to do. It voted 6-3 basically to say you can't be doing this stuff. So
now we're
we'll
gonna have not only dreamers but orphan dreamers.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. All right. So the IRS this past week made an announcement that they are going to allow churches more freedom in endorsing, I don't know about endorsing, but yeah, I guess, and talking about being involved in uh, impacting politics. So right now, I wanted to read for you the act itself that's in place. I don't know if it's called an act, but it is the Johnson, I think it's an amendment. The text of the Johnson Amendment says if you do that to a degree that the IRS finds it objectionable, the organization could lose their 501c3 status if they participate in or intervene in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for public office. That's what it says right now. What uh, the document argues that an internal church discussion regarding politics does not violate the Johnson Amendment. So that's what the IRS has said here in a case. This all just didn't come up out of the blue sky or out of the blue sky. It just came in because of a case. So a church or group said we believe we can have internal discussions about politics and not violate the amendment. And internal, what they mean is inside the church building. It's not like just the pastor and the elders or the deacon. It's the whole congregation that's considered internal. So it says, and the IRS is allowing this to occur, bona fide communications internal to a house of worship between the house of worship and its congregation in connection with religious services do neither of those things any more, and I'm reading part of this, any more than does a family discussion concerning candidates. Uh, that's not going to be, that's acceptable now. Just like if a family wanted to sit down and we wanted to talk about who we're going to vote for, a church can now do that. Uh, so it says, thus, communications from a house of worship to its congregation in connection with religious services through its usual channels of communication on matters of faith do not run afoul of the Johnson Amendment. Um, the document notes that the parties request this court enter the attached proposed order joining the defendants as well as their successor, blah, 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 blah. I think that's just a redundant of what I just read. So in essence, the layman's terms are church can now, a pastor or whomever can get up and talk about the merits or the demerits of candidate, a candidate or candidates. Thoughts on that?
I think politics has always been part of religion. Jesus was ultimately crucified by Herod. Who did Herod
Yeah,
report to?
yeah,
Julius Caesar in Rome.
right.
Okay, there's a pecking order. And guess what? Talk about being a king. They didn't understand what he meant by being a
Yeah,
king. Okay, and so uh, you could call that
yeah.
a
I totally agree
political
with you.
crucifixion if you
Yeah.
want.
Well, I mean, Pontius Pilate, uh,
We-
and the many who had influence over the decision were both political and religious.
Right.
Uh, and it was fully discussed. Remember Jesus before the crowd? I have Barabbas over here, a
We will.
thug. I have Jesus. Who do you want me to set free here?
Yeah.
Essentially, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing. And the crowd says Barabbas. So kill Jesus, crucify him, crucify him. So that was, you're exactly right. And the other thing I will say is that politics, as we said before in our show, it's hard in any walk of life to not anymore to not be involved some way in politics
Yeah.
because it weaves in and out of many facets of our life. And so a church, yeah, on one hand, I say, well, how a church ought to have some. If a church, I make the argument that church is too docile. The church in general leans too far inside its walls and I'm tired of cakewalks. I'm tired of not. I don't. I think doing things internally is important, but not to the exclusion of saving those who are in need of
Right.
Jesus. And so I say to my church and to others, we got to get outside the walls of our church. And so in my way of thinking, no better way to do that. Politics makes it easier to do that because the person you're talking about is a politician
Right.
running for a, a spot nationally, state, or local, and the church should have something to say about that. So if we have a member of city council that is known for being a certain way, and that certain way is antithetical to Christian life, the church ought to be active in saying, "Wait a minute." Just like I would say, I'm pro life, obviously. So those who run around spouting off their support of Planned Parenthood and abortion, I believe the church has a role there, but the church doesn't because of this. On one hand, on the other hand, the church again is docile, timid, in my opinion, and doesn't fight. And so I think this will open up the door, and I hope the church utilizes the opportunity.
There you go.
Yep. All right. Sammy, you got anything about that? Nope. All right. So there you go. What do we got?
We
All
got
right. Block 2, we got New York City. So I told Jeff I was going to set this up in such a way that what we're going to talk about, which is Mamdani, Zoran Mamdani is his name. We're going to talk about him, and people might say, well, why are you talking about some white job in New York City running for mayor? and I on one hand say, okay, I get that. On the other hand, I say, well, and just indulge me because I can't help it. What about the whack job we have out of the road in District 6, either 33 or 30, District 30, Jasmine Crockett?
She's a lot of things. I don't think she's a communist.
No, she's not a communist, but the point I'm making, that's a good distinction. The point I'm making is that just when we think, she's more like AOC in a sense.
Right.
So we for however many years AOC's been in office, the rest of us who see her for what she is say, how does anybody like that get voted in office? And so she's up in New York, and so from a distance we might say, well, that ain't going to happen here. And lo and behold, we got Jasmine Crockett in a next district over, right? And every time she opens her dumb mouth, it reflects on the state of Texas and specifically her district. So the reason I told Jeff I wanted us to talk about Mamdani is because we might say the same thing. Well, that ain't going to happen here. And so, and I think that's foolish. I don't think we have socialists running or communists running around the state of Texas per se in an open way, because that's a good way of getting your head knocked off. But there are some here that believe that, and Beto is not a communist. Well, I don't know if I shouldn't say that, but Beto espouses, obviously he's a liberal, and Beto espouses certain socialist uh, mindsets. Remember, Beto was the one who, in a debate for president of the United States, said, "Damn right, we're going to take your guns away." Uh, when he thought he was being cool, but it was that one line was, "We'll sink him forever." He's a perpetual loser.
Do
Go ahead.
you think Mom Dami really understands what communism is?
I don't know that anybody who hasn't lived in a communistic or communist state does, but the guy's not dumb.
We had a whole show on this, a segment on October 29th at my request
Yeah.
because I wanted to talk about something that I'd learned in college. And let's just review exactly what communism is. It's the economic ideology that advocates for a classless society where all property and wealth are communally owned. You know what? That is kumbaya around the campfire. That is a nice thing in some ways. But as Brother Richard Gerlach told us in college, communism in its purest form, as intended by Karl Marx, is the most beautiful concept on earth, spoiled by human selfishness. It can't happen.
Right.
Do you remember the hippie communes of the
Yeah.
60s?
Yeah. Of course.
Guess what? Spoiled by human selfishness.
Yeah.
It cannot happen.
I agree.
And thus,
I agree. So let me just share this. I'll go through this fast, but let me tell you about Zoran Mamdani. He's 30. Will be 34 in October. He holds dual citizenship in Uganda or with Uganda and the United States. His father's an academic uh, named Mahmoud Mamdani, and his mother is an acclaimed filmmaker. He immigrated to the United States at age 7, settling in New York City after a short time in South Africa. Graduated from the Bronx High School of Science and earned a BA in Africana Studies from Bowdoin College in New York, or maybe that may be in Connecticut. Early in his career, he worked as a foreclosure prevention housing counselor in Queens, plus roles as hip hop musician and campaign organizer. So he's
those things all go
yeah.
together.
You start seeing though when you foreclosure prevention, that's a you can see where his mindset about free this and everybody shares where it's being developed, right?
Right?
Entry into politics, manages campaigns for Kader El Yatim and Ross Barkin. He joined the Democrat Socialists of America in 2017. He was elected to New York State Assembly in 2020 after defeating some incumbent, reelected unopposed in 22-24.
Assembly is their version of council, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh, Progressive Achievement sponsored a free bus pilot program. hunger strike that led to 450 million taxi medallion debt relief. So we've got he's gonna he's gonna protest and strike until he gets free bus rides for everybody. He went on a hunger strike that led to uh, he and a bunch of others to debt relief for taxi medallion, whatever that means.
I never thought that's an effective way of getting anything done.
No, I mean you're gonna die sooner or
If you
later.
don't want to eat, it's not really my
Yeah.
issue, you know.
He announced his candidacy for the 2025 mayoral office in October of last year. He promotes fare-free buses, rent freeze, $30 minimum wage by 2030, universal child care, and city-owned grocery stores.
Because the
Uh,
city is so much better at running a grocery store than
yeah,
private
there you go.
enterprise.
He beat Andrew Cuomo by 12 percentage points. Now holds a 10-point lead in the general election. Although it hadn't really geared up. Endorsements and support. He's backed by Bernie Sanders, AOC, New York Working Families Party, and a couple of other labor unions.
Scary.
He's self-identified Democratic Socialist, also a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. I told you that. Advocates for Palestinian rights. He's anti-Semitic. Has pledged to enforce international criminal court arrest warrants on visiting Israeli leaders. He specifically said this week that if he were mayor of New York City and Bibi Netanyahu came to New York, he would have him arrested, which that will never happen. Campaign raised historic grassroots funds, which is the scary part of all this. He had a massive volunteer operation, recruited about 27,000 volunteers and knocked over 1.6 million doors. Focused on street safety and public spaces, pushes for car-free school streets, automated bus lane
Say that
enforcement,
again. Car free.
car-free school streets. So you can only walk on streets that are around, I'm paraphrasing, that are around school. In other words, you won't, school children will be free of the risk of being run over.
You know, I don't like the paralysis we see by the people that are all lined up in their $80,000 SUV, burning a bunch of
Yeah.
gas, sitting there because they don't want to put the kid on the bus or the kid is too lazy to walk.
Well, that
I would not.
yeah.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, I don't know
I'm not
how.
down on that one.
Yeah, so I don't know all the specifics. I'm just reading the top line part of it that I've gathered. So I don't know if
Yeah.
it's car free within a 1 mile radius or 2 miles or whatever. I don't know how that
Did you walk
works.
to school?
In some places where I work,
I
I
did.
live.
I did for about 8 years.
Yeah,
1.25 miles, no matter what the
yeah,
temperature was,
yep, I
both
did. I
ways.
know in California I did, and I was in high school until I got a car. So 10th grade, maybe part of the 11th grade, and it was a mile. But in California, it's always good
And
weather.
I actually got my poetic roots there because on the way home from school, uh, four of us that all lived within a couple houses of each other, we made up some kind of crude little ditties
I
on the
bet
way
you
home.
did. I bet you did. Let's see. He's so car-free school streets, automated bus lane enforcement, climate resilient street design, which I assume means that they would be painted different colors, made of different stuff. That would also slow traffic. He his platform dubbed Zoronomics. His last name, like Bidenomics, Zoronomics, includes freezing rent. Mentioned that 200,000 affordable homes in 10 years. Free buses, told you that. City tells you that. Universal child care, new Department of Community Safety and funding via corporate and millionaire taxes. So he wants to raise taxes on the wealthy. Um, his controversial stances are that he supports what's called BDS, which stands for boycott, uh, divestment, and sanctions, uh, which is a pro-Palestinian effort and program designed. All that means boycott Israel, divest your interest and your money from Israeli things, and sanction Israel. So he's pro-Palestinian, really anti-Israel. His campaign boosted New York Democrat Socialists of America membership by 40%. 2,400 new members, including outreach to Muslim, South Asian, Bangladeshi, and African American communities. he has set up. This will be. I'd like to be a fly on the wall. I'd love to be there, but this is a meeting that's set up with New York City business elites, Tishman Speyer, people from Pfizer, and tech execs, July 15th and 16th, to reassure them on his wealth tax funded initiatives. So there you have it. The guy's 34 years old. He won. He beat Cuomo, who obviously isn't the best candidate, beat him by
Got kind
12
of a rough
points,
reputation lately.
but he got voted in as the candidate for the Democrat candidate, uh, overwhelmingly by young people. So we have, and these young people get in the streets and they're chanting his name and they're doing whatever they do. Um, it's it's a sign of a number of things. But reason I'm bringing it up is because I don't think we should ever underestimate anymore that kind of stuff, this kind of guy can
Right.
show up
Right.
in
No doubt.
Waxahachie, in Texas. Because another example of that is one of the guys, as we may have talked about the other day, Alvarado, the ICE agents that were shot at. I went yesterday, did some research and prep for the show, although we don't have it as a topic, but I wanted to know this and I wanted others to know it. One of the guys is from Waxahachie. We talked about that the other day.
Mhm.
He lives behind Academy. All right.
Okay.
So you hang a right at Academy, go down to Wildflower, and he lives on Wildflower. And so I'm thinking, if somebody would have said to me the other day, last week, before this happened, do you guys have these zealots, these murderer wannabes that are targeting ICE agents in Waxahachie? I just said, no, man, we're pro law enforcement. We don't play that woke crap.
Mm.
And there we have him. And the guy's in his 30s. Uh, and he's probably not going to see the light of day for a long, long time. By the way, they're still looking for the 12th one. Who, yeah, do you
Yeah.
know that he wasn't even there? He helped buy the guns, and so they're charging him with all sorts of things. So he won't see the light of day either. Chuck says, mind blowing. Yeah, listening to that, knowing, yeah, I mean,
Craziness. Yeah.
this guy is projected to win the mayoral seat in the New York City.
Oh, I think that's liberal polling is telling you that. I think what's going to happen is that the Republican side will be too strong, and that the Democrats
Who
will
we
get
don't have anybody.
split off by.
We don't right now we might have a couple of folks that we've never heard of that are kicking the tires. Mayor Adams, who's the current mayor, uh, has been ostracized by the left because he stopped the sanctuary city stuff, warmed up to Trump. So he's running as an independent, but he, like Cuomo,
There you
is
go.
scarred up. So the question is, are those liberal polls, or is this guy really that close to running New York City?
I
And
think to find a solid Republican and that the independent, uh, he is an independent, will splinter it off,
yeah, it
and
could very well.
we
I'm
hope. I don't know.
hopeful. I will tell you this last thing on this. Trump has said, and he said it just as recent as yesterday, this guy's not going to, he's not going to destroy New York. If he wins, he's not going to destroy New York. New York, and what Trump means by that is that New York City won't get a dime of federal dollars if this guy gets in there and starts doing wacky
Right.
stuff. So, and we know Trump is willing to use that threat.
The
All right.
power of the purse strings.
Yes, power of the purse strings. All right, I do have my 5 random thoughts today.
Let's go.
All right, which I've been kicking myself because I keep forgetting to read them. Uh, I like the idea of living life like the guy trying to reach home plate on what he thinks and wants to be an inside the park home run. So you picture those guys?
Yeah.
They are flying around the bases. They're coming into home and they are doing everything. They're running out of breath. They're falling forward. They dive. They're dirt. Can you picture it? Dirt
That's
everywhere. And that's how I don't always achieve that because there are times, as we know, as we get older, we get tired and metabolism slows and all that sort of thing. But that's really how I want to go out like I'm trying to get to home plate. We have. I'm not going to say.
legs. Don't fail me.
I'm not going to say how I know this example, but there is our company. There is an older person, and there's more than one, but there's specifically an older person that we have interaction with on a weekly basis, that person is as angry and bitter and rude and as I've ever seen. And that person's got to be in 80, 85. And I'm thinking to myself, that is really sad. Now,
Yeah.
whether I'll live to be 85, I have no
Yeah.
idea. But I don't care what age it is. I want to go out that way. Anyway,
Yeah.
uh,
Number 2.
Chihuahuas are such great pets. I love Chihuahuas. Right, Sam? They're the best. Yeah?
No,
Yes, they
they are
are.
not. I mean,
And I would have said,
y'all's are the best, but
well, 5, 6 years ago, I'd have said, I ain't ever owning a Chihuahua. But
yeah,
now
no.
I miss a big dog like Layla.
Yeah.
Layla.
Everybody thinks they got the best dog in the world.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I was talking about the breed. But we do think
Right.
we have the best. But Christmas will be here way too soon.
Yes, sir.
No.
It is July. I
Wait,
told
too soon?
I said to Sonia last night, we're gonna blink and it's gonna be Christmas.
They couldn't get here soon enough.
There is no stopping the power of water. We've seen that.
We've
I
seen
mean, that's
that.
prompted by what happened last week, which we're both
We got a
writing about.
strong poem in the Substack about
So we
that.
got
That'll
to
be in tomorrow's.
tomorrow, and then on Monday we take a different take, or not a different take, but we go in a different direction with respect to the floods. But water, I've seen a flood and have driven by flood waters, and we've had accidents in our home where a room got flooded, but I've never experienced firsthand what a major flood that destroyed something. But there's no stopping.
People go to the beach in certain areas with the ocean,
Yeah,
and that undertow,
riptide.
it's
Yeah,
powerful.
it is. There's no stopping. I happened to see a video this morning about Guadalupe River, and it showed I'm not talking about a little twig tree. I'm talking
Mhm.
about a big tree that had gotten swept, and it was standing, uh, and it was headed for a bridge, and that water took that tree and just like a toothpick, just it
Yeah,
was relentless. And then my last one is, if your version of Christianity doesn't include mercy and grace, you don't have the right version. All
I
right.
like it. I like it.
Yep. So there you go. All right. He said, we have time. What time? We'll see. What's the question?
About the Biden
Let's skip
cover up.
that because there is some. Do you see yesterday with Biden's doctor
Well, he wasn't going to
pled the
come.
fifth
Said the fifth.
to I don't know how many dozens of questions, pled the fifth. And you don't plead the fifth. You plead the fifth to protect yourself from self-incrimination.
Right.
And usually it's the guilty
Right.
who used the fifth. This guy is, in my opinion, guilty of sin in covering up Joe Biden's dementia or what have you. So we will at some point we will talk about that. All right, rhyme time, boys.
Page 149. My verse has gone dark. Again, we're on this streak of things that I was writing in the early stages of the whole changing of mood in our country following the George Floyd incident. And this was written on July 2nd of 2020. My verse has gone dark. My good pal Joe said my verse has gone dark. He was referring to the poem that I read last week.
Yeah.
My verse has gone dark. Folks know that I'm not prone to bark, but today's world has gone awfully stark. Factions abound, and each hits its own mark. Everybody acts like there's some kind of narc. I guess life's no longer a walk in the park. It's all about me. Forget about you. If you ask me, it all smells like who? Me. Nothing else will do. Is this really the best we can do? If we continue like this, here comes the abyss. Let's get back to caring, not more racial daring. We're heading for trouble. It's here on the double. Just take a big breath. Take a big breath. We need no more death.
That's right. Yeah, man, hasn't the world changed so much since then? Um, and back to Jasmine Crockett real quick. The continual, perpetual, never-ending, everlasting invitation for her to come in and sit with us or one of us. She may like you more than she does me and wants to talk.
Probably so.
I doubt she ever will, but I want to have a one-on-one or one-on-two or whatever with that woman. I want to find a way to understand what she's doing, where she's coming from. I got a meeting today at 3 o'clock with uh, I call him chief of staff for Jake Elsey, our congressman, and Jake will be on here anytime we want him to, and I like Jake. I think he's a American. He's your he's your quintessential Top Gun maverick,
Mm-hmm.
with his background as fighter pilot and all that sort of thing, and a family man, and now in Congress. You know that it's off the topic, but Jake, when it was the time for the vote on the big beautiful bill,
Mm-hmm.
he he had the gavel and was up there saying, let's vote," and so he oversaw the vote for the passing of the big beautiful bill, and he did that on one other. I think it was when the speaker Mike Johnson was ultimately voted in, that Jake was up there with that gavel. So my hope is that Jake will continue growing. But I I want to understand. I never understand, but I want to have somebody like her in. I just do. Let's have a conversation. Since she's so dang smart, I want her to show me how wrong I am about certain things. Matter of fact, yesterday she came out and said Joe Biden doesn't have any issues. We know he was born with a stutter, and he's gotten older, but that's what that is a stutter. She said my the bigger problem is the mental capacity of the current president. And then Trump came out later and said Jasmine Crockett has the brain of a jellyfish. And but I want to understand these people. I do.
Well,
So you're
w-
welcome,
yeah,
Crockett. What a
Crockett,
Crockett.
and I've said this before, and I'll say this again. She's the number one self-promoting politician. Well, she's tied with AOC, and she has made a name for herself by making a name for herself by spouting off and sounding controversial.
Yeah,
And uh, it's it's a lifeboat to grab onto in a flood by the
yeah,
liberal media.
yeah. You know, it's you and I. If we wanted to increase our visibility,
Right.
we could sit here on this show. Think of the words we could use that would get us national attention. If we went, I would never use this word, but the N word. What if we started just talking like that? And
Right.
we'd be all over the place. But we don't want that kind of. That
Mama
isn't
raised
us.
us better than that.
Yeah. And so I say to Jasmine Crockett, if your desire to be known consists of you making a total ass of yourself, you ought to rethink being known.
Right. And I know your mother died in your
Yes.
youth,
Yeah.
but you still have part of you that it's there because of what she put in you.
Oh, no doubt. There's no
You were
doubt.
12 or 13?
No, I hit 30. I just turned 30
You had turned 30.
when my mom died.
Oh,
Yep. Now, when my parents divorced, she divorced me, and her and my dad divorced. I was the age you're talking
but
about.
who died when you're
My mother. When I was Nobody died when I was that young.
okay.
Yeah, my mom died at 30. My dad died when I was
Okay.
38,
All right.
39. Or wait, yeah, yeah. So anyway. All right, it's that time of the show for
Today in
us to
history, I was able to limp by at 12 and 0 because I got 3 bonuses.
nice.
Sam knows how important the bonuses are. This one was a wild backdoor guess, and I just was lucky to get. Wyoming was admitted as the 44th U.S. state.
Wyoming?
Wyoming.
I'm gonna say 1906.
1883.
That's within 7 years of 1890.
Yes.
Sam, there you go.
Luck.
Let's go.
Jury selection began in Dayton, Tennessee, in the trial of John T. Scopes, charged with violating the law of teaching Darwin's theory of
Mm.
evolution. Scopes was convicted and fined, but the verdict was overturned on a technicality.
Um,
1931. I don't remember when Darwin was alive.
1950.
1925.
Ah,
Got it.
Dang it, I
I
was
said
gonna go
This
31.
had to
20s.
do with teaching Darwinism. Darwinism
Yeah,
was in
but still, I was trying to.
way earlier than that.
Yeah,
I can't
Yeah.
remember when Darwin died.
dang it.
Okay. Sam's gotten better on World War II. I know that. During World War II, the Battle of Britain began as the German Luftwaffe launched attacks on southern England. The Royal Air Force was ultimately victorious.
Well, wait,
1944.
when it started?
During
During World War.
we're talking about the Battle of Britain. It was a
Uh,
particular battle of the World War II.
43.
I said 44.
40.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh, I was gonna say 41.
All right.
Armistice talks aimed at ending the Korean War began at Kaesong.
Oh man, Korean War, 1958.
I was gonna say 49.
51.
Oh, okay.
Barely got it. Okay.
Okay, I'm doing good.
The first active communication satellite, Telstar 1, was launched by NASA.
The last,
Terry's doing good.
I'm gonna
Uh,
go 63.
74.
62.
My God.
What
I'm
did
gonna
you say, Sammy?
63.
throw out a special bonus here. I think you'll know this.
Yeah.
I hope Sam does. It'll be a learning. What does NASA stand for?
National
National
Aerospace.
Aeronautics, Aeronautic
National.
and Space Administration. I may have aeronautics wrong.
No, you've got it. And
Yeah.
whatever you said was close.
Airspace.
National Aeronautics or Aeronautic
Aeronautic and
and
Space
Space
Administration.
Administration.
Space.
Yeah. The Greenpeace protest against Rainbow Warrior was sunk with explosives in Auckland, New Zealand,
Mhm.
by French intelligence agents. One activist was killed.
1956.
No, we just said
We
what was
just
the
said
last
51, right?
62 was their last one.
Oh,
I'll give you another one.
1966.
1982.
85.
Yeah, okay.
How many more we got?
We got 3.
Oh wow, I'm 4-2, Sam.
President George H.W. Bush lifted U.S. economic sanctions against South Africa.
92.
86.
91.
You're shaking your head no at me.
George H.W. So
He only served one term,
he did.
88 to 92.
Oh, well, that's where I screwed up, but I got it right anyway.
And I just split it in half with 90. I thought that would get it, but it
Yeah.
was 89. Here we go, or 91. The U.S. House approved a measure to allow airline pilots to carry guns in their cockpit to defend their planes against terrorists. President George W. Bush later signed the measure into law.
98.
2004.
2002.
I got it.
I got the bonus there. I said to
Did ya?
myself, well, we had the big thing in
One.
2001, and they got on it.
Yeah, they
They
did. I
got
thought
on
it would
it.
take them a little longer.
Yeah. Here we go. We finish up with South Carolina pulled the Confederate battle flag from the state house after more than 50 years. I guess they mean pulled down.
Yeah, pulled down. I'd say
2021.
2019.
2015. You're both there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that it? Can I tell you something real quick about that?
Uh,
When I lived in Montgomery, Alabama, that's where I started my newspaper career and I went to school and all that. But I'll never forget a congressman said that he was gonna climb the top of the Capitol dome right there in Montgomery and take down the Confederate flag. And he announced it ahead of time. He said, on this date, at this time, I'm doing it. So there was a Governor Guy Hunt, followed George Wallace mindset and all that. The so they, I mean, the streets leading Dexter Avenue leading up to the Capitol. Martin Luther King Jr. taught at Dexter Avenue Church. Um, it was lined with your Confederate people, on this side, everybody else on this side. It was jam packed, and they had put a chain link fence around the Capitol, and said to that congressman who was black, said, "You, the minute you touch that fence, you're going to get arrested." So when he went to climb the fence to get to the Capitol, they arrested him. It was one of those moments where the wrong word, a single loud noise, could have turned that into a bloodbath, and we were right there. It was a block from the newspaper. It was incredible.
And
Anyway,
Good job, Terry. Thanks for
Was
playing.
he
Yes.
doing this for publicity, or do you think he really was doing it?
I think both, but he was as a throwback.
How do you climb on the top of Capitol
Yeah,
building?
he couldn't. So in
couldn't.
that sense, he knew he couldn't do it.
Right.
So he was getting publicity. In
Yeah.
another sense, he wanted it down. But anyway, so thank you for being with us. That's our show. We will be back next Tuesday at noon. You can go to substack.com, search Grit and Good News. You will find all of our content there in various formats and platforms.
Comes
And
out
it's
twice a week.
twice a week, Monday and Friday, and it is $5 a month.
A whole $5.
Yep.
Get you a whole month.
Less than a donut.
There you go.
Anyway, so thank you for being here today. We will see you on Tuesday. Be safe.
Have yourselves a great day, and remember, put a smile on somebody's face today.
Oh, yeah.